All right, good afternoon. The information I'm going to share with you is preliminary. This investigation is less than 60 hours old. Before I begin, I want to once again extend my condolences to the family of Mr. Burks, who are obviously grieving the loss of their loved one. Anytime the department has to use force, it is never a desired outcome. We always hope for a peaceful resolution. Historically, our policy in the department has been not to share information and videos at an early stage of an investigation. However, with the abundance of transparency that I want with this case, my commitment to the citizens, I'm providing an update that will involve some video. Although I cannot share all the information in the investigation due to it being an active investigation, we are still on the ground doing interviews, obtaining videos, and talking to what we hope to be some witnesses to the circumstances. I'm going to share with you a lot of information in hopes of bringing some clarity to some of the misinformation that I have heard and read. On Sunday, October 2nd, at approximately 5:01 a.m., officers from the 2nd Precinct were dispatched to a residence in the 14,900 block of Littlefield. They were dispatched to that run on a person armed with a knife and who was experiencing a mental health crisis. Upon arrival, some 3 minutes later, officers spoke to a family member who advised them that his brother, a 22-year-old by the name of Mr. Porter Burks, was suffering from a mental health condition and that he was in fact in crisis. They also advised the officer, or he also advised the officer, that Mr. Burks was armed with a knife and that he was concerned about Mr. Burks' safety as well as the community's safety. He further stated that his brother had slashed his tires on his vehicle. Officers obtained a description through conversation with him. One of the officers, in fact, said that he thought he may have seen him near a party store and announced that they were looking for him over the radio. They made it to the area of Snowden near Linden with other responding officers and observed Mr. Porter holding a knife in his right hand while walking in the middle of the street. One officer identified himself and revealed that he was part of our crisis intervention team. That's our CIT members who are trained in dealing with crisis, mental health crisis as well as de-escalation. And that training consists of some 48 hours as well as refresher training. This officer had received that training. This officer told Mr. Burks that he was not in any trouble once he made contact with him and that the officers were there to give him some help, but he needed to put the knife down. After approximately 4 minutes, the officers as well as the other officers on the scene, the officer that I'm speaking of as well, the other officers on the scene, repeatedly assured Mr. Burks that they were there to help him and that if he put the knife down, they could get him the help that he needed, get him transported either home or to a hospital. Each time, Mr. Burks refused to put the knife down. As this was occurring, the officers were formulating a plan, which is part of our CIT training, to formulate a strategy, to use plans, which consisted of a number of different things. One of the things it consisted of was ensuring that all the scout cars were not running and that the vehicles were locked, because we didn't want the person in crisis, or we don't want the person in crisis, to make their way to a scout car and drive off. They also had at least one of the officers on the scene get his taser ready. As they were trying to negotiate with Mr. Burks, without warning, Mr. Burks charged at one of our officers with the knife in his hand. The officers, fearing for his safety, and the other officers, fearing for their partner's safety, fired their weapons. Despite this horrific act, the officers were able to quickly transition to a first aid mode and begin to render first aid. The officers then conveyed Mr. Porter Burks to a local hospital where he unfortunately was pronounced dead. This is a tragic situation. Anytime we use force, it's not the desired outcome. Anytime we use fatal force, it's the worst outcome. At this time, I'm going to have the video start, and later in this presentation, I'm going to be bringing up the Director of Professional Standards to talk through our investigatory process and what happens in an investigation such as this. At this time, I'm going to start the video, and I will be stopping it periodically to highlight a few things for those viewing. Would you please start the video? I will warn you that this video is quite graphic. and could be troubling for some to see.
What's going on? What's going on?
So he's not here. I think he on the next block over.
Okay.
I have a little brother. He schizophrenic, and he have a knife. So
Okay.
Please have them increase the audio.
dangerous and dangerous. So, but I know someone just seen him a few minutes ago on the next block over. He about 6'2".
Sarge, please have them increase the audio.
Blue, some gray jogger pants.
His hair
Yes.
kind of man, I seen him when we were going to the other run. He was standing at the liquor store.
Okay,
Yeah.
y'all make sure y'all need to.
This was like 45 minutes ago though, when we were on a route.
I mean,
But he in this area. So
is he just
And he
just
have
walking around with a
episodes.
knife, or?
Huh? Where? No, that's not him. But he have an episode.
He's got like a light blue,
It's like
and it's got his hair's
It's
kind of
yes,
like flat. And
yes. He looks
he was at that corner when we were going to that.
Yeah.
I didn't see him. He was
So
in.
like, y'all make sure y'all need to. Like he's known for having like really bad episodes. And
Yeah,
so
I know the
people
name of it, but I just
like
wanted
to be
to
in
check.
danger.
he had a knife on him.
Yes, he has a knife. And
So-
he,
What kind of knife?
like a knife you bought from like I
Like a
don't
pocket knife from the
like a
store.
pocket knife.
Oh, okay.
Like a pocket knife.
So if we find him, can we come here and would you take him down? Would you be willing to petition him at the hospital?
Well, at this exact moment,
Yeah.
This my, if y'all find him, yeah, I will definitely meet y'all in the hospital. At the hospital, yes.
What we'll do is we can even come pick you up.
Y'all come pick me up.
Yep.
Or do you have a ride?
He just slashed my tire, so that I can't go anywhere. So you guys have to pick me up.
All right.
Okay.
His name is Porter.
Porter?
Yes.
Porter with a P?
Yes. You can put my phone
Yeah.
number down or my name.
His name is Porter.
He's definitely in the area. He is not far. It's 313.
Yep.
767.
The video pauses here so that we don't put out the phone number.
Okay, we'll give you a call if we find him.
Okay.
If he comes back and you haven't heard from us, just give us a call, okay?
Okay, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, so I want to pause here for 1 second for a couple reasons. One, this is the knife. It's an 8-inch knife, a little over 8 inches, about 8.5 inches long. It's a folding blade knife, but it is clearly not a pocket knife, number one. Number two, I want to highlight the fact of the intentions of the officer at this time. As you can hear, that the desired outcome was to get Mr. Burks some help, was to get him secured into a hospital and, in fact, go back and pick up the complainant who called, who could not drive himself to the hospital because Mr. Burks had slashed his tires. Continue.
Drop the knife for me, man. Come here real quick. You're okay? You're not in any trouble. You're not in any trouble. Can you just talk to me and drop the knife? 2-1, he is armed with a knife. Hey, my man, just come here real quick. You're okay? You're not in any trouble.
Not have you. Let's approach him.
I just need you to drop the knife,
Have him back
okay?
off
My
a
name is
little bit.
Sean.
Let's get a car in between him.
My name is Sean, okay? I'm with the Crisis
And
Intervention
officer.
Team. I'm just here to check on you. Okay?
Units don't approach. Back off.
My name is Sean, man. You're okay. You're not in any trouble, okay? I just want to help you. I just want to help you, man, okay? Can you do me a favor and drop the knife? Can you drop the knife for me, please? Please? Whatever you're going through, I can help you.
Porter.
Porter, you're not in any trouble, man.
Go get you some help. Your brother's worried about you.
We just need you to drop the knife for us, okay?
I'm going to pause it here and we'll pick back up at that point in a moment. This is a crisis intervention trained officer, a CIT officer, the term that you hear us use a lot. This officer's job is to respond to these runs, as we do quite a bit, and attempt de-escalation techniques, regardless of how long it takes, as long as the matter isn't escalated or a more dangerous situation occurs. As you can see, the officer is extending his hand. That's part of his training. The extension of the hand is to say that everything here is safe, I'm not here to harm you, and you're in total control of this moment. If you are able to understand and come with me, we can take you where you want to go. So the questions that he's asking him is part of his training. The conversation that he's having is very deliberate, and it's part of his training. Continue.
Porter, you wanna go get some help? Why don't you just drop the knife? We'll get you some help.
Just drop the knife for us, Porter.
You too. Go ahead. 10 units coming, do not come from the north end. 2-2, I need you to start staging medics. Stage them at Schaefer and Linden.
Hey Porter, what do you want? You wanna go get some help?
Okay, copy on one.
We're here to help you, Porter.
Porter. Hey Porter, what do you need? Hey Porter, just have a seat right there. Don't walk closer to us, okay? Do not walk closer to us. Somebody have a taser out here. Hey, Porter, put that knife down.
We're here to help you, Porter, okay? We just want to help you. Your brother's worried about you. I'm worried about you.
So, then you just dropped the knife? Can I ask you why? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Huh? All right, set that down and we'll do that. All you gotta do is set it down and we'll do that. All right? I promise you, you ain't in no trouble. Don't walk towards us.
Don't walk towards us.
Don't walk towards us.
Don't do that.
Don't, Porter.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
You sit
Don't do
down.
that.
Drop the knife, and we'll be good.
Just drop the knife, Porter, okay? We're here to help you, man. Whatever you want, we'll get you, okay? Don't walk closer.
No one better have keys in their car for them to, whoever left the door. Porter! Hey, you want to go, you want some help? Are you sure? Porter! Yeah. Okay, hey, can you listen to me? What? Can you just set that knife down and we'll talk? I promise, here, we'll put everything away. We just need you to drop the knife. Can I ask why not? Huh? All right, well, we'll give that back to you, but we just need to talk, but I can't talk to you close with that knife in your hand. I don't want to talk. What do you want to do? You want to ride home? If you want to ride home, we'll go take you home. Porter. Porter. Someone move one. Just hang tight. Just don't keep approaching. If someone move their car so we can get one up there. Like we did last.
So do we still have eyes on this individual? Yes, we do. He is armed with a knife. 514.
Porter, we're here to help you, man. Whatever you want, we can help you with. We can get you home.
Next roll, right over to the
But
staging area.
right now, we just need you to drop the knife.
A very tragic situation. Certainly, again, not the desired outcome. Again, my condolences to the Burks family. This is not what we wanted. The officers were trying to negotiate with him, and without provocation, he charged the officer with a knife in hand, gaining ground on him very quickly and in fear of their life, they fired their weapons to stop the threat. At this time, I'm going to bring up Director Chris Grabbling of our professional standards. I know that a number of you have questions regarding the investigative process, and he's going to explain that to you and give you as much detail as he possibly can. Director Grabbling.
Good afternoon. In all officer-involved shootings, there's a dual-track investigation within DPD. First, there's the potential criminal investigation, which is led by an outside agency, in this case, the Michigan State Police. Michigan State Police take the lead on the criminal investigation and the eventual warrant submission to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Once Michigan State Police conclude their investigation, they will submit that warrant submission to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for their own independent review of the situation on October 2nd, 2022. In addition to that, the department conducts its own internal administrative investigation. That administrative investigation takes a back seat initially to the criminal investigation. The criminal investigators are the ones collecting the information, checking for any available videos to include any security cameras or doorbell video on that block that could assist in the investigation, talking to the relevant witnesses, and collecting witness information. Once their investigation is complete, the departmental internal investigation then also begins to pick up. The department's investigation at this point is restricted primarily to review of body-worn camera, as we have seen here today, making sure that we've collected everything internally that is necessary for this investigation. So those are the two investigations that will be proceeding over the next several days and weeks as we attempt to bring all relevant facts to the decision makers in this situation. In addition to that, we also begin to take a look at the involved individuals' past as well. And we've done our investigation into Mr. Burks' past. What we have found is, unfortunately, a system that has failed Mr. Burks on several different occasions. Over the last several years, there have been multiple times when police have been called due to Mr. Burks' violent behavior and has sought him to be committed into the mental health system. What we have found, as you heard his brother state, is that he suffered from schizophrenia, and that schizophrenia manifested itself into violent behavior. Some examples of this in 2020, first in March of 2020, he stabbed two family members, a sister. He stabbed the sister in both her neck and her hand, as well as a brother in the top of his head as the brother came to defend the sister. In August of 2020, he again stabbed one of his family members, this time a 7.5-year-old stepsister, also in the neck. Most recently, on June 26th, the family called Detroit police out because he was walking up and down the block looking to fight anyone. He was committed at that point to Sinai Grace Psychological Ward. 2 days later, Detroit police received a call that he had escaped from that ward and was running in the traffic on McNichols. Officers attempted to chase him down as he ran in and out of traffic on McNichols in his hospital garb. They were able to catch up with him, at which time he assaulted the officer who initially attempted to detain him by punching him in the face. At that point, we deployed a taser. That taser did not take effect, and it was only once 3 other officers, so 4 in total, were able to detain him at that time. So what we have seen is a pattern of him being brought to receive psychological services and being released, and or not being followed up with taking his medication and violent behavior.
This is a system that has failed Mr. Burks. It's failed Mr. Burks' family because they've obviously tried to get him help. And unfortunately, it's culminated in the incident that we have before us today. We need help with this system. The officers are routinely put into this mode, and candidly, we're seeing more and more violent episodes like the one we saw with Officer Courts, who was murdered by someone who was having a mental health episode, and as recently as a few weeks ago in the 12th precinct, a very similar situation with someone who was having a mental episode and randomly went through the neighborhoods and shooting someone. Our mental health crisis in this country is real. Our mental health crisis in our city is real. And this is not just a police matter. We're a response unit. Mr. Burks was in the care of mental health facilities, and he did not receive the treatment that he needed, so desperately needed. But our investigation continues. At this time, I'm going to transition to any questions that you all may have.
Would officers have been armed with that knowledge of the priors in going to that call?
I don't know if they were. As part of the investigation, we look at all aspects as far as police contacts and how many contacts we've had. And that's standard protocol when there's an officer-involved shooting as part of the investigation. And that's when we learned of this information. I know that some of our CIT officers have information on some of the participants in mental health treatment, but I can't speak on that right now. I just don't know. It's part of the investigation. We'll know later.
That being said, is there a fix to that, to maybe more communication on the front end of these calls, so there's maybe more of a strategy to handle these situations?
Well, actually, I saw the deployment of an effective strategy. And, you know, we do this a lot. And you've been on a number of those cases, barricaded gunmen, barricaded gunwomen. And, you know, our philosophy is to be patient and wait it out and have the conversation. What I witnessed is an officer doing just that, having a conversation and letting it take as long as it took, making it safe, making him feel safe, deploying a number of different strategies. There was one point in this very tragic video where the officer says, "We can put all this away." And what you may not know, if you really watched the video, he actually did reholster. And then once there was a slight advancing towards him, he did what we're trained to do. And that is to get in a low ready. And the low ready is not pointing it directly at him, but in a low ready in his direction, because this is a life-threatening situation. It's unfortunate, but it's a life-threatening situation. So I saw the deployment of strategy. I heard a supervisor on the scene deploying strategy. He talked about locking the car. He talked about the use of a taser, if that was an opportunity to do that. He talked about where to enter. They were working a strategy. They were coming in, trying to get behind him, and doing a number of different things, and talking him down and getting his attention focused on them so that they can deploy that strategy. It's when he escalated to the all-out run towards the officer that things changed very quickly.
Chief, because I can't tell, how far was he away from your officers when he started running at them?
We're still in that part of the investigation. We know that he was about 6 feet at the last shot, it appears. But I just don't know. We'll be looking at that as well.
Is that too far away for a taser to be effective?
Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Hi, Chief. That kind of touches upon my question. If you could talk more about the use of the taser. Did it land? Did it make contact? And then, yeah, if you could just start there.
Yeah, there were a number of different things going on. What you saw was a supervisor in control of the scene strategizing. You saw a CIT trained officer deploying his tactics and techniques. And as those things were trying to gel and come together, tragically, Mr. Burks sprinted towards the officer with weapon in hand, and it changed the course of everything that was planned. With regards to a taser, you know, when you're closing on someone with a knife, and you know, there's really little time to wait for the reaction of a taser, because you can close that reactionary gap so quickly, and we've seen that, and we train to that. And the reality of it is, you know, we have to train to these types of circumstances because they happen. And so to talk about the if the taser was deployed. We did hear an arcing of a taser, but it in my review, and again, this is preliminary because the investigation is 60 hours old, it appeared that there was a simultaneous arc, which means that one officer that had the taser may not have had an opportunity to pull his weapon. I don't know. I will have to find out.
Okay, and then do you know how many shots were fired?
I'll bring up Director Grabbling, who's doing the investigation, to speak on that.
As best we can determine at this time, 38 shots in 3 seconds were fired.
Sorry, just, was it, how many officers?
I can pick that up. How many officers was it?
There were 5 officers who fired their weapon, and the number of rounds was 38 in approximately 3 seconds.
I wanted to ask about the previous, I'm sorry, go ahead, were you done?
I'm sorry, Chief was also just reminding me. So in terms of an outstanding question might be as well as how many times he was struck. At this point, it appears that he has wounds, 15 wounds on his body. The medical examiner will be examining those wounds to see, 1, if they are gunshot wounds, 2, if they're entry wounds only, or entry and through. And so we will not have a final count of how many times he was struck until the medical examiner's report is complete.
Thanks, sir. My first question is about the past cases, the one in June and the other ones that you mentioned here. Whatever happened? He stabbed his sister in the neck. Why wasn't he ever arrested for that?
And again, preliminary. My understanding, and I asked the same question, is that they were exceptionally close. And generally what that means is that someone chose not to prosecute, but I don't know if that is in fact the case or if it was due to his mental status. But we'll be looking into that as part of the overall investigation as well.
And secondly, if you could talk a little bit more about this mental health issue. This seems to be a growing problem. Just in March, DPD expanded. Any plans to expand that program further? Anything in the works? Because this is an ongoing problem you guys have been dealing with for years now.
Yeah, and you know, we are extending the program or expanding the program. We're trying to be in all the precincts by the end of the year. That's my goal. And you see the effectiveness when it works, right? I mean, I think the officers are on the right path with the information. When things change is when, you know, tragically, Mr. Burks and that all-out sprint towards the officer really did not give the officers the opportunity to get into some of the additional aspects of CIT. So the unfortunate reality of it is, even with that type of training deployed, you're going to have some incidents. I think the bigger discussion needs to be not what the police are doing with mental health, but who else is helping us with mental health issues. We can train up all the officers, but when you have a situation where someone is coming in contact with the mental health system and they are a violent person, we got to get them the help. I mean, this is a condition that Mr. Burks didn't ask for. It's a medical mental condition, and he and his family deserves that they have medical treatment, mental health treatment. When he was at the hospital, he should have been kept there. And the unfortunate part of this is that he was not. And many times he's been released and have had episodes. And, you know, he's not the only one. Again, we talk about Officer Courts, who was tragically murdered by someone in crisis. We talk about the incident in the 12th precinct. We talk about the guy in the neighborhood that shot a bunch of people, including a retired Detroit police officer, and we later found his body in the park. And he just went on a random murdering spree. So we have a mental health crisis in our city and in our country. And we really need to help the police and address it, because it can't be just the police.
Hi, Chief. I have a couple of questions. My name is Andrea. I'm with the Detroit Free Press. Do you think that 38 shots were necessary to take this young man down, and is that part of the crisis intervention training?
Well, obviously, we talked about what the crisis intervention training is, and I don't take light of the fact that we had to use fatal force. This isn't television, okay? This is on television, but this work isn't television. The officers had to stop the threat. They felt threatened. Officers also on the scene had to assess the threat and stop the threat. There's no time in 3 seconds and someone charging at you with a knife to look over to see what other people are doing. You, as a trained police officer, are trained to stop the threat. Multiple officers fired, as we've indicated, and that's part of their training, because you see someone being advanced upon with a knife. And, you know, we've had officers stabbed, and knife fights are very, very serious. So, you know, we certainly know the answer to your question is that shooting is not a part of crisis intervention. I don't know the value of the question being asked in that manner, but what I will say is the training itself is a very effective training, and had Mr. Burks had not advanced in an all-out sprint with a knife in his hand towards our police officer, we would be having a different conversation. Although we don't cover the successes in CIT, I'm sure we wouldn't be asked how effective it was if we didn't have the circumstance. But having the circumstance, we will look at all aspects of our training. But at this point, I saw the deployment of CIT training that led to conversation. What I then saw was the application of fatal force as a result of the officer being in fear of his life. Thank you.
And then I did have a second question, if that's okay. Will the officer's name be released, and did all 5 officers deploy weapons that were involved?
So we followed our protocols. I'm not releasing the officer's name during an active investigation. The officers are on administrative duty until the conclusion of the investigation, at which time the findings will be turned over to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for their evaluation and assessment of the facts and circumstances in the case.
Okay, so were all 5 officers, they all deployed their weapons? You said 5 officers were
I'm sorry,
involved.
all 5 officers what?
You mentioned that 5 officers were involved. Did they all deploy their weapons?
Did they all deploy?
Yeah.
If we you want to talk about that?
There were more than 5 officers present. 5 officers fired their weapons.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for taking these questions. Just a point of clarification on the previous point, you said that they are on administrative duty, not administrative leave.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. It should be on administrative leave.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's it.
And in terms of how you started off this press conference, you mentioned that the department's taking the unusual step of showing us some of the footage that came out of this incident. And I think in the past you've talked about when there's been an officer-involved shooting that showing this kind of footage can sometimes interfere with some of these parallel investigations that occur. I guess I'm wondering what kind of interference does publishing or showing this kind of footage present in other officer-involved cases, and why was the determination for this case made that the public should see aspects of the shooting?
I made the decision, and I made the decision because of some of the misinformation I've read in the media, and certainly some of the conversations that I've heard in the media, as well as in social media regarding this incident. And my administration has consistently been transparent, and I thought it would be of great value to go away from our policy, even in instances, and it's not just a Detroit police policy. A lot of agencies around the country have that policy during an active investigation not to release anything that could compromise the investigation. And also, certainly when there's been civil litigation and things such as that, not to discuss those cases. We're not doing that in this instance. And again, my commitment to this community, since I have been chief, my commitment to the men and women of this department is to hold them accountable, to also support them, and to also be transparent in the actions that they participate in and the actions that I participate in. And this was an opportunity to do just that. As I've continuously heard misinformation, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to set the record straight. You know, should we change our policy down the road, we'll be evaluating and looking at everything.
So, and just to follow up on that, I mean, would you be supportive of a policy that did require the department to release body cam footage, dash cam footage of these kinds of incidents?
I'll be looking at all policies in the department going forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Andres with CBS Detroit. Chief, you talked about the shooting not being, or weapons not being part of the CIT training. As they were developing a strategy, was non-lethal options like mace or pepper spray ever considered?
I can't speak to Mace and pepper spray, but we know that the taser was part of their decision and their strategy. But again, you know, when someone is wielding a knife and have already slashed tires on a car, and the officers didn't know that. They knew that from the complainant himself, that he had concerns for the community. They knew that he had concerns that his brother needed help. They knew that he had slashed the tires of his brother's car, and now they're encountering him. So all those things are going through their processing, right? And certainly CIT has some very valuable elements and aspects to it, but none of those take away a life-threatening situation. And as long as the officers are able to engage, as you saw, and the area was safe, they were able to continuously deploy the tactics. Candidly, the conversation about was the number of shots part of the CIT training, I just think that was misplaced sarcasm. But what I'm speaking of is the training.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to get one clarification. So, Mr. Grabbling, when he escaped from Sinai Grace's unit, and he's out in the middle in his hospital gown and all that, so they captured him again, correct?
They did.
What happened? He was let out again? Or?
So at that point, he was returned to the hospital. A not-in-custody warrant package was submitted to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for resisting and obstructing a police officer. That was signed on July 21st, and a warrant, not-in-custody warrant, was issued on July 28th. So he had an active arrest warrant for his arrest for that incident.
So he was wanted at the time?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thanks. But, okay, so so they let him out again?
Apparently.
The hospital let him out after he escaped?
It's still early on. We can't tell, but apparently they did.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Chief. That concludes the questions.
All right, thank you all for making time.